Hello, EduMagicians. Welcome to the EduMagic podcast with your host, Dr. Sam Fessich. Dr. Sam is a professor of education, author of EduMagic, and a pumpkin spice latte fan. This podcast is designed for pre-service teachers. Remember, friends, teaching doesn't begin at graduation, but during that first class at 8 a.m. Let's get this party started.
I'm AJ Bianco from Podcast PD, a part of the Education Podcast Network, just like the show you're listening to now. Shows in the network are individually owned, and opinions expressed may not reflect others. Find other interesting education podcasts at edupodcastnetwork.com.
Hey EduMagicians, it's Sam, and before we start into this episode, I want to share with you about an amazing resource. It's called the Educator Candidate Member Portal. AAEE provides you with resources such as virtual job fairs, a job board, interview tips and prep, resume building, webinars. You can even get a copy of the Job Search Handbook digitally. So head on over to aaee.org and create your free Educator Candidate Member account today. Friends, one more thing before we get started. This episode is brought to you by my new course, Digital Portfolios from Scratch to Interview Ready. Head on over to sfessich.com/courses for more information about this self-paced, hands-on virtual workshop. Hello, EduMagicians! Welcome back to another episode of the EduMagic podcast. My name is Dr. Sam Fessich, and today I have with me Danielle Nuhfer. She's going to be sharing a lot about mindfulness best practices and her secret about how checking in with herself helped with classroom management. But before we get into all that great mindfulness stuff as educators, Danielle, can you please share a little bit about your teaching story? And welcome to the show.
Oh, thank you so much, Sam, for having me on. I know it's been a time of yes, we have tried to connect for quite some time, so I'm so happy to be here. And to give you a little bit of background about my story, well, my whole family were teachers, and I decided that I didn't want to be a teacher. So when I went to college, I was going to be a writer. I was going to be a journalist. And then I started tutoring high school, or started tutoring English, and couldn't resist the teaching bug after that. So I tried to be unconventional and it didn't work. And I've actually been teaching high school English for 18 years. And although I work a lot with teachers and mindfulness, and we'll talk about that, and I work with students in that regard, I absolutely love being a classroom teacher. So that's a little bit of my background. I tried to fight the teaching bug, couldn't do it, and here I am.
Well, we're so blessed to have you in the field of education. I think a lot of people have different paths that they come to teaching. Some, like you, have come from a family of teachers. I don't want to do that. I want to do something different. Oh, okay. I think teaching is right for me. Or maybe they're the first educator in their families, or maybe they're changing majors or something like that into education. And I think it's just so interesting to hear how people got to where they are today, because we can just see where people are today. Like you're in your 18th year of teaching. And I think sometimes when we have our student teachers and our field students working with practicing educators, it's so easy to compare ourselves to, I can't be as great as Mrs. Nuhfer because, but you've been here for 18 years. This isn't your 18th day of teaching. I think it's so interesting to hear about people's backstories into education.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
So today we are going to be talking all about mindfulness. Now, let's break it down. What is mindfulness? There's a lot going on. It's a buzzword. What do we need to know about it? What is it?
Well, mindfulness is really simply paying attention to the present moment without judgment. So that's it. It's paying attention to when you're walking, you're paying attention to how you're walking and how that feels. When you're eating, if you're practicing mindful eating, you're paying attention to that bite of food and how it tastes in your mouth. And that's the only thing you're paying attention to. So I think we as humans like to overcomplicate things. But this is a very simple practice, although it's not easy. That's how I'll put it.
I like how you said it's simple, but it's not easy. Can you tell us more? What do you mean by that?
Because when I just told you the definition, you probably thought, well, that sounds really simple.
It
Must
did.
be easy. And I will say that thinking about all of the distractions, all of the time we spend worrying, all of the phone and the technology and the pull for our attention makes mindfulness not so easy to do.
So, what are some best practices when it comes to practicing mindfulness, being a mindful teacher?
So, the best practice I can say, I like to compare mindfulness to like a game. So, the idea is you need to practice before the real big game, right? When you're playing a
Right.
sport. So, what I would encourage for teachers going into the field is actually practicing mindfulness outside of the classroom. And you can do this real simply with going for a walk, and you keep your phone at home or you turn it on silent and you just walk and you just use your five senses while you're walking. Or you could actually do like a guided mindfulness practice. Like that's probably what people typically think of when they think of mindfulness, is like sitting still and focusing on your breathing. And that's absolutely fine. It could also be, like I said about mindful conversation. It could be when you're talking to someone. Again, I go back to the phone, but putting your phone to the side, putting whatever distractions, turning off the TV, and really looking at the person and practice mindful communication with this person. So spending time practicing, and then just like we would with sports, you bring it into the classroom having practiced it, because you're again flexing that muscle outside of the classroom. And then when you're in the classroom, you start to focus on what the student is actually saying and not worrying about the copies that you need to run. You start to, right? So you start to focus on, oh, I'm starting to get stressed because the kids are talking. Oh, I need to take a deep breath like I do when I'm sitting in my mindfulness practice. So that there's a transfer.
That's really powerful. Thinking about that example you just gave, if the students are being present with the students, listening to what they have to say instead of like going through the list of things you haven't done yet or need to do in your head. That's not, you're right. It does sound, the definition of mindfulness does sound simple, but it's not easy to put into practice. So what are some ways you can kind of start to focus in with, in addition to the practice, but what are some like, are there any like mantras or anything that you can do to start like shutting out some of those distractions? Does that make sense?
Yeah. So one thing I would say to do is to, if we're talking about the practicing part, I would say to designate an actual time when you practice it. So whether that be an actual couple of minutes before you leave for work or leave for school, like actually designate a time, like make an appointment with yourself to do some sort of mindfulness practice. That will give you opportunities, right? But then I also would say, if you are, now this is when you're actually in a classroom or when you're practicing teaching or doing that sort of thing, take 3 breaths before you enter the classroom. So really just try to create mindful moments in your classroom where okay, the kids are going to be transitioning between activity and activity. I'll put my hand on my heart and just like breathe 3 breaths, and then I'm ready to go for the next part of the day. So you create mindful moments within your day, and that really starts to again translate when things aren't in your control, which happens often.
Especially as a teacher. And as you're talking about these mindful moments, I'm thinking from a parent perspective, this is great as well. This is a great strategy to be more present with your kids and with your students.
Absolutely.
So I have a question. So we can think about mindfulness in the traditional learning space. What about in a hybrid or a virtual learning space when maybe things are not going right in a virtual learning space? Maybe some students can't get connected or Wi-Fi's out. what are some strategies? Because that sounds like a high stress situation, and we're dealing with that all over the country. What are some ways we can practice mindfulness in that virtual and hybrid space?
So what I have been doing, I'm in a hybrid situation right
Mm-hmm.
now, and of course we were virtual last semester, but I've been doing, and I do this in my traditional classroom. I start every class with something I call a silent 60. And that's literally 60 seconds of all of us just putting our heads down, they could shut off their cameras, whatever they need to do, and just it's 60 seconds. Like once everybody's in the room, 60 seconds of just like, all right, everybody arrive, and then we're gonna start. So you kind of, in a traditional classroom, I
Oh,
oftentimes talk about it as leaving all your stuff at the door, before they
yes.
come in and they're bringing all their other baggage. I give them 60 seconds to just regroup. And I'm not teaching them necessarily this is mindfulness. Like, it's just, this is just a way to break up whatever was going on before you arrived here and what we're going to do together in a couple moments.
That's really powerful. And it's teaching them about not only the literal bags that they're bringing into the classroom in a traditional space, but the baggage that invisible backpack that we don't see. And
Yes.
it's so easy to just keep that on our minds as we enter new learning spaces or we go to different periods with throughout the day. But it's so important to just sometimes we just need to set that aside. I always tell my future teachers in class at the end of class, thank you for being present, thank you for working hard, and bye for now, because we never know, we'll see each other again, but I don't like to say goodbye, we're saying bye for now and
Hmm.
thinking about, how we can be more thoughtful in the words that we use with our students. I think it's really powerful. And I
Yes.
love that 60-second like regroup. I think I'm going to try that tomorrow when I teach my students because I teach them on Friday. So I think that'll be fun. I love that. Now you were talking about some strategies for hybrid, for virtual and traditional learning experience when it comes to mindfulness. Why is this an important topic for our future teachers to know about and our current educators listening? But this is a podcast just for our future teachers. Why is this something that they should be doing and practicing now as student teachers?
So there's so many reasons, but I'll talk about a couple that come to my mind right off the bat. The first is teaching has always been extremely chaotic in sometimes a really beautiful way, but it for teaching just by nature of all the students that you have and the unknown and the different needs that people bring to the classroom, you have to make a lot of decisions quickly. And as a new teacher, that's exhausting. It's exhausting as a an experienced teacher. But what mindfulness allows you to do is it really allows you to be with what is happening in your classroom and work with what you can have control over right at that moment. Because sometimes as
Hmm.
teachers, we are just in our heads, and especially new teachers, right? Like, am I doing this
Yes.
right? Am I like meeting everybody where they're at? And really, sometimes we forget to see the individual.
Yes.
And we're just looking at like, they're all screaming at me. No, they probably aren't all screaming at me.
Mhm,
Like we make
mhm.
these wild generalizations. And really, if we looked around, most of the things are probably going just fine, but we're focusing on those little things and
Yes.
we exacerbate those little things. But if we actually see the kids individually, we might really see some real gems that we've missed.
Yes, that's so true. As you're saying this, I'm like, yeah, I do that. Absolutely. Yes.
Hmm.
Oh my gosh. Isn't it interesting to think about some of these? I would think mindfulness is kind of like that soft curriculum. We might not have a class or a course on it, but it's something that future teachers need to know about in order to be to be that successful teacher that they want to be and to practice those strategies to be a mindful educator. It helps you check in with yourself, and it helps you, make those connections with your students, which is what teaching is all about.
Absolutely.
We've talked about the what, the how, the why, some strategies to get into mindfulness and to be a mindful educator. At the beginning of the show, though, we did tease a little bit checking in with yourself and how that helps with classroom management. And I know the student teachers listening perked up when they heard classroom management, because that is a topic we all work on. And I think it's something that it comes with practice, but it also changes with every student that comes into our classroom, that classroom management piece. How does mindfulness and checking in with yourself as a teacher help you with classroom management?
So this is the secret that I wish I would have known for the first probably 10 years of my life. I was consistently, and maybe somewhere along the line somebody told me this, but I just totally missed it. But I was always under the impression that classroom management meant I needed to be in control of what the kids were doing. Like I was needing to control them and what their outcomes were.
Mm-hmm.
And what I realized through mindfulness practice is that if I am focusing on my own, maybe I'm upset because a kid comes in late.
Mm-hmm.
And I realize, because I'm being I have mindful awareness of my heart beating faster and my face getting red. Previous to practicing mindfulness, I may have completely flipped my lid on this kid, right? And then it would have caused maybe all these other things to happen along the way in that class. But what I've learned from mindfulness is that when I'm feeling that way, I need to breathe, and then I need to just go and see what's going on with that particular kid and figure out a way to check in with them without flipping out in front of everybody and then having an entire escalation happen. Because then I'm not creating a safe container for anybody in my room.
Mm-hmm.
So what mindfulness allows us to do is we have to be okay with ourselves. We need to be consistently checking in with, how am I feeling right now? Where am I stressing about, again, things beyond my control? Am I meeting the kids where they're at right here, right now, instead of thinking about, how do I control everything they do? How can I be in control of myself and, again, meet the needs of the kids how I can with the resources that are available to me?
It sounds, going back to the definition, it sounds simple, but it's not easy to do. It's something we need to practice. And having that mindset shift, like you had talked about for classroom management, it's not about me controlling my students. That sounds really negative. It's about, how am I controlling myself? And how, because that's what I can control. Thinking about what's in our locus of control and what's outside of it. That's so important. Danielle, this is great. Keep going.
Oh, I was just going to say, and creating that class container. Like, that's what I think of. Creating a safe classroom container starts with me and my being, present and regulated. The only way, because my stress, when I'm stressed, it's contagious to my students, so if I'm regulated, I'm the one that needs to be able to do that for the classroom. That's not easy to do. That takes a lot of presence and awareness. So especially as first year teachers, like really focusing on breathing and grounding into your feet and making sure you're like just trying to make eye contact with kids as best you can, or at least like interact with them in some way, shape, or form individually, so you're connecting with them and not, again, looking at the whole entire class as one entity, but that you are creating a safe container for each of them.
That's so beautiful. Danielle, this has been an amazing conversation, so practical, things we can put into place right now. And I know you have something special for my listeners today. Can you share a little bit more?
Yes. So I have a great handout that you can, again, print out for wherever you're teaching. And it's going to have 10 10 tools, 10 mindfulness tools, and 5 of them are for the teacher. So in the heat of the moment, throughout your school day, mindful moments for teachers, and then 5 of them will be the ones that you can use with your students. And they all will be things that can be done virtually, hybrid, or in a traditional classroom.
Awesome. That's awesome. Thank you. And how can my listeners get in touch with you, Danielle? Because I know they're going to have questions, comments, and they need more resources.
Well, I would love for them to come on Facebook. I have a Facebook group through Facebook, We Are Teaching Well. So I'd love to see them there. I'm on Instagram, Teaching Well Danielle. And you can always check out my website, teachingwell.life.
Excellent. I'll put all that in the show notes so they can find that Facebook group, connect with you over on Insta, and check out your site as well. Danielle, thank you so much for your time. Stay well and stay safe, my friend.
Thank you.
All right, friends. For all the show notes, head on over to sfessage.com. You can find all the show notes, resources, and links there. And remember, you have the EduMagic within you.
And there you have it, EduMagicians. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe and share it with your friends. For more EduMagic, check out sfessage.com and follow Dr. Sam on Twitter and Instagram @sfessage. Until next time, you have the EduMagic within you.